Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Stacey Rose, and this is Divorced Women Dating, the first episode of a podcast that is for you if you are thinking about divorce, going through a divorce, newly divorced, or a veteran of divorce, and not sure how to navigate the challenges of post-divorce dating as a woman. I have created this podcast for smart, strong, and soulful women so we can rewrite our love stories together. We can rewrite our life story together on your own terms. I'm your host. I'm Dr. Stacey Rose. I'm a seasoned psychotherapist and relationship expert. I've been helping people and couples, individuals and couples for over 30 years navigate the challenges of relationships, marriage, divorce, single life, parenting, you name it. I've seen a lot of things in my practice over the years. And I also am a divorced woman. So I know personally and professionally what it's like. And in large part, why I've wanted to create this podcast is so that there is some kind of support, some kind of community out there for you if you are overwhelmed, and who isn't when their life is upside down after a divorce. So I want to share a number of things with you, what to expect from this podcast, what you'll gain, and maybe how you possibly might want to contribute. So the end of a marriage is not the end of you. Instead, it's really an opportunity to create a new you, a new life. And while that sounds very cliche, again, I am incredibly hopeful for so many women who consciously set their minds to creating the life that they want. It's very possible. You know, after a divorce, many women understandably ask, where do I begin? And we don't really know. I mean, oftentimes we have a story that we might have learned or heard from our parents in childhood about what to expect. Well, you know, for a lot of little girls, it's grow up and have the big wedding. And isn't that exciting? You'll meet your Prince Charming. But that's not always what happens. And I am here to tell you that you can rewrite the story. That now it's not like you're starting from scratch. You're starting from life experience. Also, if you have children, that's a whole other level of more life experience. And so navigating the dating world post-divorce also with kids is something we will address too. Divorce is not the end of a story. It's really more like a plot twist. And again, you get to write the next chapters of your life. Today, I'm going to tell you why I'm so passionate about this podcast and why I've really wanted to create it. You know, I was married for 17 years and I have 2 children in their 20s, and I'm divorced over 13 years at the recording of today, this podcast. And I've learned a lot in my time, again, personally and professionally. And when I first got divorced, I looked for a book. I looked for a resource. I looked for guidance and help. And I really couldn't find anything that was helpful. I'm sad to say, because there are so many wonderful resources out there. There are millions of books out there that talk about relationships and marriage and even divorce. But I didn't see anything specifically on post-divorce dating. You know, how do I do this? I felt like I was getting behind the wheel of a car without driving lessons. How do I, like, there's so many buttons, and how do I turn the steering wheel, and how do I put the car in reverse or in drive? I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. And so if you're feeling like that, it makes sense. And that is understandable and normal. I've also had many clients over the years ask me for, can you recommend a great book? Can you recommend a great podcast on how do I navigate the dating apps? How do I know if this person is the right person for me? Again, we're going to talk about all kinds of relationships. So whether it's heterosexual or otherwise, it's not relevant. What's relevant is finding your person. But how do you know your person, regardless of gender, is the person for you? And so much of what I've learned over the years and what I will share with you in this podcast today and in episodes to come is finding the relationship has so much to do with finding out who you are, finding out about what makes you tick, what excites you, what's really important to you, what do you value? And you might think you know, and maybe you do, but you don't necessarily know as a divorced woman. So doing the work is critical to having a healthy, successful life. And I don't necessarily just mean a healthy, successful relationship. Your life can be rich and wonderful with relationships with girlfriends, with family, with your children, with hobbies. So there's lots to life other than a marriage. And I'm pro-marriage. I'm very much a fan of having healthy relationships. The name of my practice actually is the Rose Relationship Learning Center. And I often say, because relationships don't come with directions. Well, neither does divorce. And I'm not proposing that I've got all the answers for you, but I will definitely share my own experiences. We will laugh together. Maybe we'll cry together, share stories, share wisdom, share resources. What I want to do here is build a community of women who are divorced that really we can support each other and build each other up. So you know you're not alone, because you are not. The sad thing is 1 out of 2 marriages still end in divorce in 2025. Well, as of 2024, that was the most recent statistic. So here we are. This is why I am creating this podcast, because I want you to know that you're not alone. I want you to know that there's hope. It can be really overwhelming and it can be really scary. Maybe you now have to manage all the finances. Maybe you're a single parent. Maybe you have to go back to work if you haven't worked. And then where does dating fit into all of that? It's challenging for sure. So these are some of the things that my podcast will address. We'll talk about the ups, the downs, the ins, the outs of post-divorce dating. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I went on this date with this person and they did such and such. It's not about judging. We are just going to laugh at the humanness of all of it and hopefully learn lots about ourselves. Because isn't that what life is about? Learning about who we are and what is your purpose here? Why are you here? So we'll talk about, how to know when you're ready for dating. I've got a quiz on my website, which is staceyrose.com, STACEYROSE.com, which I'll tell you more about, that helps you figure out whether or not you are ready to date. There's a process to this. And sometimes some of us, and I was guilty of this, dive in a little bit too quickly. We think, okay, we're divorced now, and now let me just find a replacement. That doesn't necessarily work all the time. So learning about who you are and when you are actually ready helps profoundly. I also think that it's really important to stay in the moment and not get too far ahead of yourself. So many times we think, I thought I was going to grow old with this person, which is understandable. You thought you were going to grow old with your partner. And then X, Y, and Z happened and you said, hey, I'm not willing to live with this anymore. So, okay, the future is unknown and the uncertainty can be so uncomfortable. But isn't that true of everything in life? We don't have the answers. We don't know what life looks like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What's that expression? We can laugh and then we can plan and then God laughs, right? Or the universe laughs, whatever you believe. So, this podcast, again, will cover, again, the ins, the outs, the ups, the downs of everything post-divorce dating. I want you to know that this podcast can be your safe space, where 2 times a month I will remind you that you're not alone and that your romantic life and your overall life isn't over, but instead it's really transforming. You are in such a change of going from what was familiar to what's unfamiliar, but can be completely transformational. It's not just an end. It's like a death, a divorce, and it's also like a birth. And they kind of happen at the same time, which is really confusing to our minds. It really can be. So a lot of, again, what I'm going to offer here are resources and tools and tips. And you can go to my website, stacyrose.com, and look at the resources. I've got some free quizzes for you to take and tips on how to know if you're ready or not to date. We can talk about all of those things. The format for my podcast is going to be that I will share on different topics each episode. I will have guests at certain times, women who are newly divorced, maybe some therapists who are also divorced. And I also want to be able to open it up to you, where you can either call in, or at least for starters, for now, I'll ask you to email any questions or comments or topics you might have on your experience or what you'd like to hear addressed in this podcast. The email address you can find on my website is stacey@stacyrose.com. STACEY at STACEYROSE.com. So feel free to ask me any questions that you want to, and I will address them. Everything will stay anonymous and confidential in terms of names and details. The other thing too, I'm going to offer each episode is a prompt for you that if you're somebody who's a journal writer, and I'm a big fan of keeping a journal, I think it can be cathartic and therapeutic. At the end of each episode, what I will do is I will offer you a prompt that you can you write it down at the top of a journal page, and wherever it takes you, it takes you. There's no right or wrong. Don't worry about grammar, spelling, anything like that. But instead, just see where the pen takes you. And I'm a big fan of pen to paper, not necessarily typing, but do whatever works for you. So let this podcast be a safe forum for you to explore you and what your divorce process has left you with. Some scars, some wounds that are all healable, I'm sure, with the right work. And maybe different perspectives on how you can look at things. Kind of an opening up to wait, what are the possibilities for my life? Maybe my life doesn't have to just be an ending and sadness and then diving into swiping right, swiping left on all the dating apps, which we can get into more detail, and we will. Today's prompt is going to be, so take out your journal or jot this down somewhere. And the prompt is going to be, if you could write a title for the next chapter of your life, what would it be? What do you want the next chapter of your life to look like? Really, we are the author of our lives. We are in charge of writing it. Now, certain things happen to us that we have no control over, of course. The weather, for example, a pandemic. There are lots of things that we have zero control over. But the truth is, we have 100% control over our response. That's always the case. If you're somebody in a 12-step program, you know the Serenity Prayer really well. And if you're not, and if you don't know the prayer, Google it. It's wonderful. God, or whatever you believe, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The courage, which, by the way, divorce takes extreme courage. The courage. So God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference. And there's a profound difference. Because so many of us get stuck, I think, in trying to change things that we have zero control over. well, I'm hurting, so I want him to hurt too. Or, I can't believe my ex, has a girlfriend already or has moved on so quickly. And I'm sitting home, crying with a pint of Ben and Jerry's. There are stories we tell ourselves, and we can change the story, because the truth is we shouldn't really believe everything we think. Our minds can tell us all kinds of stories. And I think a lot of us women have really good imaginations. So be careful with the story you tell yourself. In any case, the prompt, your first homework assignment, if you will, is create a title that you would like the next chapter of your life to replicate. What do you want the next chapter of your life to look like? And if you say, I don't know, maybe that's the title of your next chapter. I don't know. And forgive, once in a while, you will hear me curse. I don't fucking know. I just don't. That's okay. You don't have to know right now. All you have to do is be willing. Just be willing to explore the possibilities of what your life could look like. You might really not have any idea as to how rich and rewarding and fulfilling your life can be. And I know that because I've created a really fulfilling life for myself. So I thank you so much for joining this first podcast of mine. You and I are on an adventure together. I've never done a podcast before. But I always like to grow and challenge myself to do things I've never done before. And I encourage you to do the same. If anything that you've heard in this episode has resonated with you, and you have a girlfriend who might be thinking about divorce or going through divorce or divorced herself, also feel free to share it with a friend. I think that, community is everything. We don't have to go through it alone, and having support really makes a difference. So feel free to go to my website, staceyRose.com, STACEYROSE.com, and sign up for my e-newsletter, which is on there, and or drop me a review, whatever you'd like to do on Google. I really thank you so much for joining today, tuning in, and look for more episodes. Future episodes will include challenges of dating, again, readiness, how to navigate some of the dating apps, how to really know, do I move forward? Do I not? How to take time off, when to take time off from dating. So there are so many nuances to this post-divorce dating as a woman. And I am happy to share the journey with you. So stay open, stay curious, stay courageous, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Thanks for hanging out with me on Divorced Women Dating. Dating after divorce is definitely an adventure. And honestly, it is way more fun when we do it together. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single moment of the helpful, hopeful, or just really relatable episodes. See you soon.